Welcome back to the Lux Bride podcast. Today we decided that we would take any of your questions or concerns that you had, and we're going to be addressing them today. So we have about 6 of them to read off that people responded to, and Stephanie's going to start with the first question.
Okay, yes. And so this one is about an unplugged ceremony. So they asked, would love to do an unplugged ceremony, but I know that some family members, like my future mother-in-law, wouldn't listen. Do you have any advice for that? And I thought it was very fascinating. Lisa, I'm so excited to hear your answer though, or what your thoughts are.
So for an unplugged ceremony, I really like to have a sign saying that this is an unplugged ceremony. Please turn off and put away all electronic devices. It's like usually like a cute little wooden sign or chalkboard sign, and sometimes people show a picture of a camera or a phone and they just have that. An unplugged ceremony is very large font.
Yes.
Another way to do it is to also like share that, and then after that have a basket where you collect them. So like you put your phone or your tablet in a box or in a basket at a table that you can get right after the ceremony. With COVID, that's a little harder to do right now because you don't want everybody touching the same things. But in normal time, it's kind of like a little collection station to keep people honest, and it's also kind of funny at the same time. So that's some of the things that I have seen, but I know that you have some ideas too.
Yes. Well, so, and even when it comes to somebody specific, like your future mother-in-law, I think it might be, a good time to have a conversation with them about why it's important to you, why they are important to you, and why you want them present. And I think also explaining like you are the example set for the whole day because you're in the front row. So if somebody sees you go over your phone, everybody else is going to think it's okay.
Yeah.
And on top of that though, like going kind of off of what you had said, Lisa, I had suggested that if you just think it's going to be a few people who are going to be an issue, then like your future mother-in-law is more than likely going to walk down the aisle. So have a coordinator just hold on to their belongings during that time. So that way, because you don't want to hold on to your belongings anyways. Like imagine walking down the aisle with a phone in your hand. That's kind of weird.
Very weird.
Yeah. But just like have them hold that all off to the side just for the ceremony portion of things and then give it back afterwards. So that was kind of my thoughts with it. It is different, and I think the biggest thing is to have your officiant announce it is an unplugged ceremony, because people can easily ignore a wedding website, they can ignore a sign, but it gets really difficult when you have an officiant going, the couple has requested that you put all of your cell phones away during this time. They would like for you to be present. It's really difficult to ignore that when you have to be there listening.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I love the idea of having the coordinator hold on to their belongings, because you're right. Like, what do you do with it? I mean, I have seen some moms like wear a clutch purse and they can put it in there, but honestly, like, get rid of the stuff. You don't need to have it on you, put it away.
Right. All right, do you want to go to the next question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so I think we're gonna move on to question number 2. And the next question is, it's also related to Unplugged. So I really want an unplugged ceremony, but my fiance doesn't really care. How can I explain to him how much it means to me? I don't want to see cell phones in any or all of my pictures.
Yeah, so kind of goes back into, I think, the same thing. Whereas for me, I had a slightly different perspective than Lisa did, and I like that. Because my thought was, well, if it's not really a big inconvenience to them and they don't really care, then I think that you can explain to them, well, okay, well, if you don't really care, here are 3 items. I'm going to put it on my wedding website. We're going to put it on, we're going to have a sign, and the officiant's going to announce it. That's not really taking up any burden on you. So if you don't really care, then this is what I would like to do.
Mm-hmm. So, and I agreed with you. We had like similarities and agreements, and slightly like, I don't know how that would go. So I had said, if your fiance doesn't care, do what you want. But the one thing that I did think that he would care is if it was put in the ceremony. I don't know if he'd really like it being in the ceremony and part of that. But like Stephanie and I were talking, and it's like, okay, what if they ignore the sign? So like you can't ignore what's being said during the very beginning of a ceremony. That's the time you have everybody's attention. Mm-hmm. So it is keeping people honest, but I could see that being like the one aspect where the fiance would be like, no, we're not putting that in our ceremony. So I'm like, if you get 2 out of the 3, that's not so bad. It's really easy to put on the wedding website and really easy to have a sign. So at least you get 2 out of the 3 and you're getting the point across. My other thing was that if you really don't want people to have phones, are you going to assign someone to be responsible for asking people to put away their phones?
Yeah.
Legit question. Is it just a signage and hoping that people are respectful of your wishes, which they should be? Mm-hmm. And if you're worried about them just doing whatever they want, then maybe put a point person in charge. I don't know if it's an usher, if it's your coordinator / planner, it's a mistress or master of ceremonies. Obviously they need to do so quietly and respectfully, but if you're really like, this is not happening, I want somebody to execute and like make sure it doesn't happen, then it's simply going to guest and ask them to put away their devices. So like talk about all of those options, decide what you want for all those options. I can tell you both as a coordinator and as just an attendee to many weddings, one of the weddings that I actually personally attended, it was for a friend. We set their flowers. We were also guests, my husband and I were. Like an aunt in the 3rd row had the biggest freaking tablet, a tablet. It was a Mac tablet and it wasn't small. It was like this. And she's like holding it up and it's like, what are you doing right now? And she's in the aisle with it. It is the most disruptive and the most rude thing you can ever do. The couple hired somebody that they trust to capture this day, put away your damn devices.
Right. And again, like I will even say, like use me as an excuse. I cost a pretty penny. You don't waste your money on me.
And you don't want that in your pictures.
Right. And I will say, like for me, I was, as a side note, I was mortified at my brother's wedding. As I was a bridesmaid, I was standing there and my mother pulled out her phone.
Oh no.
My mother does not have a Facebook. My mother has no social media. What are you doing? So thankfully she took it out. I made eye contact with her. She put it away. I was like, that's right. You know what I'm talking about. Put that away. Okay. But the next question is actually quite interesting too, because it does go into social media.
Yes.
So it is there a way you can avoid having everyone post their photos to social media before we do as a couple?
So Stephanie and I were both in agreement on this one, is that you can't control people. You can't control what they're going to post. You can't control what they're going to take on their devices. And so we both agreed on that, but I didn't know as much as what Stephanie's going to go into. She had some ideas of like kind of controlling, if you will say, but she's going to go into it more about like the social media aspect. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so I had said there's not really a way that you can like stop people from doing it, but there are certain parts of the day that you can maybe control a little bit. So like for instance, that's where we go into an unplugged ceremony, having people not have that moment, right?
Yes.
And then I didn't actually tell you this earlier, Lisa, but I was like, you can have sort of a different moment of like during the getting ready process of the day or like first look, you can at least ask your wedding party like, hey, no photos to be posted. I don't want you to have photos.
I feel like that.
Yeah, and they should respect you, like they're there to support you, right? So they should totally respect that.
Yeah.
And then I don't think a lot of people knows about social media, but you can control more in social media. Like you can control who tags you and who, or like, what photos you want to be seen of yourself. So while other people are posting, not like everyone is going to see it. So until you want them to, right? Because you can approve a tag versus not approve a tag. And so that's great. You can do that on Facebook and Instagram where you can approve if somebody tags you in an image. So that I think is a really great way to control who is seeing what. But unfortunately, both Elise and I came into an agreement. It's really difficult to not post at all unless you're in like the most remote location in the world.
Yeah. The guy said it was the lake shore because there's like zero reception and internet by the lake shore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you'd even be surprised because sometimes we'll like right out on the lake you're good, but like that in between part you're not. I don't know how you can control that. Right. Okay. Do you want to go into the next question?
Yeah. So we're on to question number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And question number 4 was, I told my mom that some of our vendors have said we will need to provide them with dinner. And her response was, I bring my lunch to my job. they can't bring their own food, what do I do?
Yes.
This one we were kind of like, wow.
Yeah. It was, okay, so this question, yes, threw me off a little bit, but I think I understand where it's coming from. It seems to be like a little bit more of like a corporate mindset, but this is a service-based industry. So I think Elise and I are both in agreement with this. Like, you take care of the people that are taking care of you for the day. So especially, it's just when it comes to dinner, it's the easiest way to say thank you. As we are working very hard to capture photo, video, if a planner coordinator is there, the DJ is making sure like your guests are going all night. So it's a service-based industry. And then Elise is going to add on to that because we had quite a lot to say about this question.
Yeah. Not to be a little sly about my response, but we all bring our own lunch. But when we're working 12-hour days, you know, sometimes you need something more fresh for dinner. I feed my team for lunch. We all bring our own snacks for breakfast if we're on the car right there, or if we wake up because we're staying overnight. So if we do coordination, we're there the day before. Yep. But to be able to have lunch, we are working our butts off for you because we want you to have an amazing day. If you make sure your vendors are nourished and happy, we are going to make the best of the experience for you. So instead of being malnutrition and exhausted, we're going to be replenished and energetic, and we're going to provide the best that we can of our services to you. I think that, you know, that's the least thing you can do when people are spending 12, 14-hour days working on your wedding day to make it the most perfect moment for you. I was really surprised that somebody would have this reaction. I think it's kind of rude.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, I think another thing with that is, like, logistically, even because I've helped coordinate with Elisa, we don't have enough space to carry food on us.
No.
Like a photographer, there's no place I can put an extra meal in there. No. But then on top of that, I think that your mother might be a little disappointed to find that it is in our contracts. It is in a majority, it's becoming more industry standard, like more and more and more and more.
Yes, it is.
I would say about 80% of contracts now will have something in there that says that you need. So yeah, I think it's becoming more industry standard. I think about like 80% of contracts now, which is for your planner and coordinator, your DJ, your photographer, and your videographer. Those should be the four that you should really look at. They will all have it that we are fed a meal, which is dinner. And so I think your mom might be just a little disappointed if she already has this mindset, because it's in the contract they have to feed us. So that's something that that is required.
Yeah. And a lot of couples don't think about it, and I don't think a lot of parents think about it, but when you spend 12 or 14-hour days, you're already packing a lot with you. You're already bringing a lunch with you. So getting a warm meal, it's really nice to have that. And it's really nice to have a space to eat that meal. Like, you know, so like there's just so many things to take in context with that.
Yeah. And that actually leads us into the next question. I'm going to dive right into that because you were already answering, and I love it.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I love it. Should we be assigning a specific vendor table at dinner? And if so, do we include them in the overall seating chart? So you were already kind of going into that, so just keep going.
Yeah, so it's really nice to have a place for vendors to drop their stuff. For me as a coordinator, we have a binder, we have lighters with us. You know, both me and assistant, we both have our coordination and planning binders and clipboards. And then photographers and videographers, they have their whole bag of gear. They need somewhere to hide that. You don't want it on the side of the dance floor because it's closest for them because they have nowhere else to go with it. You want them to drop that at a table. They can have an outlet close by, hopefully, so they can charge stuff if they need to. But if not, they can have like their bags and their cases of gear. So it's out of the way, but they can quickly get to it if they need to. And it's nice to have us in the same room as you so we can keep eyes on you. For photo and video, and even DJ, they need to be able to see what's about to happen when, because you don't want to be like, you know, DJ's probably not gonna eat until after the dances, or maybe he eats right when you do, but like he's gonna be really quick, or she, sorry, I just assumed it was a guy because a lot of them are. But for photo and video, like you want eating and be like, oh shoot, they're doing speeches and they have to run from one room to the next because they actually hear you doing speeches. It's easier for them to be in the room and to see what's happening when, so that they can make sure that they capture everything for you. And it's nice also, in addition, if we eat when you eat so that we're on the same timeline as you and not as your guests. I think that's everything.
Yeah. Well, and again, like, I think it's like keeping us in a corner because, again, for our equipment, but also like when you think about it, we're only eating dinner. That's the only time that we're using that table. So if you if you put us like anywhere else, there's now an empty table, which looks a little bit odd. But then I think the other question is, would you have a couple include vendors in the overall seating chart?
I would say no, because we're not walking in like the guests are. We're with you, so we might not even be paying attention to the seating chart. I mean, as a coordinator, we set the seating chart out and we already know what the seating chart consists of, or we help guests find their seats, so we know a little bit more. But as photo and video, like if you're doing photos and pictures with the bridal party and you're like filming them like as a grand entrance, like you're not going to see that sign at all.
No.
And usually that's a prior communication with the bride or with the coordinator and like, hey, there's a table for you. It's just labeled vendors. There's no table number. You're not on the seating chart, but there's a table labeled vendors and that's for you guys. That's very obvious because it'll be the only table without a table number and it will literally say vendors. Whether it's like upright or it's just laying down, that's okay if it's just laying down too, so you don't see it in pictures, but it's really nice to have that. And you don't have to have decor on it, you know, like you don't have to do anything for us, but I think it's important for us to have like storage space because especially like a tent, there's nowhere to store anything. It's just openness outside. So it's just really great to have a storage area without it being seen.
Yeah. And sometimes like I can't always, so like a DJ or like a band usually has like a little bit of extra room for us to store our stuff, but sometimes even then it's like, well, there's not always enough space. So just having
because now you're encroaching on their space.
right. And that's never what we want to do.
No.
But I love that. Okay. So I knew that you would have like so much insight into that question. So thank you.
Yeah. So that leads us to the last one. So question number 6 is, my future husband is not very emotional. How do I tell him I'd like a sweet emotional reaction without making it seem forced?
Yeah.
This is tricky.
This is a very tricky question. I don't think there's a way that we can make that necessarily happen, but I do think, like for me, because I set your fiance up, I think it's about reminding them in the moment, this is your time to like let it all out if you want to let it out. We are going to be very far back, so we're not going to be able to hear you if you talk at all. This is your moment to have your moment. Don't worry about us. So that usually helps a little bit. I also think, obviously, with the first look, that's the time. That's the time to have that emotional reaction. I realize now that the question did not state that. I think I automatically assumed that there was a first look.
Yeah, no, but it's important to share like why, you know, having a first look can make sure you capture that reaction. Yeah. And it's more private, so he can feel more relaxed to react how he needs to.
Yes, and I have found that a majority of the time when someone, when one of you says they don't really have, your partner does not have a very strong emotional reaction, we get a lot more out of a first look because there's not a lot of eyes on them during the ceremony.
Yeah, they can let their guard down a bit. I definitely agree with that. I think that would be definitely when you want to have a first look. So I think it's also like, this is a little bit forward if you were to ask this specific question. So it's not like what you ask, but how you ask it for this part. Mm-hmm. I think it could be a general conversation from couple to couple, you know, like as one person to your partner, to talk to them about like, hey, I think I'd really like to do a first look. I really want to see the look on your face. I want to see your shock, or I want to see your laughter, or I want to see your tears. And I really want to have that moment with you. And I want us to be able to let our guards down. And I want to just focus on each other in that moment and not like, we'll have photo and video there or whatever. But like, I really want to focus that moment on just you and me, and for us to have that before everybody else is a part of it with the ceremony and reception. I think that is the perfect way to say that. And I think that is the best way to go about trying to get a reaction, but also like letting them know that you just really want to have that time with them alone.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's what a first look is so great for. It is that time, just you two. Yeah. We're not like, I coordinate first looks so that way nobody is there. No bridal party, no parent, especially no parents. I love the parents, but like they're too much. They're too much in that moment.
Yeah.
So anytime
they're a little paparazzi themselves and trying to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
When it's like,
yeah, or it's almost like moms are like really.
Sorry, I jumped in on that.
Like, yeah. No, you're fine. Like you hear them being more emotional, and you're like, oh, I can't do this. And you're like, no. This is just the time for you two. How can we get just the two of you alone during this time?
Yeah, and I think if you don't think that your partner is going to be very emotional, they might just have like the pure laughter of joy. And I think that is an amazing reaction too. Like maybe it's not shock and stunned, maybe it's not crying, but maybe it's just laughter because they're just so happy because they get to marry you and you're so stunning. You know, like I think all of those reactions are going to be normal reactions. And sometimes people are a little bit more shy or timid, and really they're just like stunned. So sometimes it's hard to see a reaction because you're just like, wow, like, you know, like it's kind of an ethereal moment where like, is this really happening? And it is happening. But like, you know, some people react differently. So you might not have that. And I don't think you should put that pressure of having the perfect reaction because that's not a natural thing to do. So make sure you don't do that.
Yeah, I think it's managing expectations. Because like, I know for me, one of my favorite things to capture this is particular for guys, they're not emotional, but when they turn around, they just do like the eyebrows up. That's sometimes as much as the reaction as you're going to get. It's just like, oh, yeah, that's what we got. That's a good thing. Just think of it like you stunned him with your beauty into silence. We just got to manage that expectation because he still loves you. He's going to think you're beautiful. Your partner's going, like whoever it is going to be in awe. That's a good thing. But sometimes awe means nothing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's really tricky. In every wedding, there's like different questions that you have or different scenarios that you're trying to solve or different things that you're expecting. And it's just being realistic in those expectations and how to be a little diplomatic and a little bit more sensitive, but also like staying true to what you want or who you are. So.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all we had for today. I loved these questions, Lisa. I hope you did too, because they were very different questions, and I like that because it shows. Well, I mean, we've worked with so many weddings that we were both like, oh, we have different approaches to how we would answer this question.
Yeah, I did too, and we're coming from it from different angles, and some of these are a little logistical. You know, some of these are logistics, some of these are concerns. So it's nice to know that you're thinking about the process of your wedding day and to heal what really raises a concern or fear for you and how to logistically problem solve or spearhead that being an issue. And so that's what I think I enjoyed most about some of these questions. I wasn't sure what to expect, but these were great questions.
Yes, and well, again, when you reach out to the internet, sometimes the internet gives you good stuff and sometimes it just doesn't. So
yeah, we didn't know what we were in for.
Yeah. But thank you so much for tuning in. Next week is probably going to be a slightly quicker episode where we talk about updating your wedding website, when to do it, how to do it. So we're chatting all things that. And we will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in this week.
Bye.
Bye.